What is up? And welcome to a very special edition of the DLF Team Preview Series. This is my team. I'm finally getting a chance to hang out with some Saints fans, the best kind of fans, who dat, that are out there. Sorry, that's the last time. I'll try to be impartial here. But Saints are great, and I'm excited to be talking about the Saints today with some very special guests. As always, we have some smart football people that we invite on to talk about and break down the team, what we should be paying attention to as we get into training camp and as we get into the preseason. And we're brought to you by dynastyleaguefootball.com. Make sure that you are signed up. This is the premier Dynasty website. Make sure that you're doing that. Look it down below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Do all that good stuff. Hit the notifications, all of that. Today, we head to New Orleans. As I said, we're going to talk about the quarterback battle between Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill that everybody likes to get fired up about. The fallout from the Michael Thomas injury, Marquez Callaway and Traquan Smith, and then a potential breakout at the tight end position that also is worth talking about as well. You see these guests. We're going to introduce them to you here in just a minute, right after this. All right, right here to my left, she's all over the place. Like, if you pay attention to anything on Twitter, like, legitimately, like, no lie, I'm not trying, like, one of the best follows on Twitter. And obviously, Matthew Berry agrees because I wanted her to run his Fantasy Life account. She also has Petite Pods, which I'm sure episode 1 is going to be dropping anytime, right, Cooter?
Very soon.
Yeah, very widely known, should be followed by everybody. And yeah, Cooter, how's it going today? What are you up to? What are you working on?
I mean, just having a good time on Twitter. I appreciate people for supporting my dumb tweets. And pretty soon we're going to be doing the Sundays are for the Girls podcasts on Sunday with Steffi Smalls, Lynn Dellians, and Victoria. I don't know her handle, but that's the gang.
Yeah, you'll find her. If you're on Twitter, you'll find her, no doubt. FFB Victoria or something like that, I think is right. So then right here below me, we've got Eric Moody. Eric, I mean, he's at Eric in Moody on Twitter. Make sure you are following him. Senior analyst at Pro Football Network. Played O-line at Nichols University. That was something new I learned about you today. Eric, how are you?
No, things are going pretty good. I know we're edging ever so closely to training camps getting started for all the NFL teams. Officially in fantasy football draft season, so things are going pretty good. Just obviously spending a lot of time at Pro Football Network, creating audio, video, written content, and just creating a lot of juicy content for our draft kit that'll be coming out here very, very shortly. But no, things are going very, very well. I will close on this though. With the Saints, Michael Thomas, and everything that's going on there, it's dark times, desperate times for us, but we'll talk about that.
No doubt. Yep. And then last but not least, certainly Matthew Seward here at Matt2Frosty, lead dynasty writer at FF League Winners and co-host of the Fantasy Newsroom that was nice enough to have me on as a guest at one point. So I appreciate that. Matt, how are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to talk Saints football. Just working over on League Winners and building up the newsroom and tweeting every day, probably annoying a lot of people. So that's what I'm here for.
Love it. I know you do a lot of work with Tyler Karp as well, and those guys, and CJ, I think is CJ, right?
Yeah. Yep. I run their social media page for their podcast as well, the Dynasty Duo. So that's been good experience and a lot of fun.
Very cool. Well, a lot to get to here, and a lot of storylines. As like you kind of hope for a boring preseason, right? Like, not a lot of exciting things going on. There's been some of that here recently for the Saints, a lot of stability. But Eric, we'll toss this first question to you to start off with. Like, just what storylines or camp battles are you paying the most attention to?
Yeah, that's a very very intriguing question. I think the obvious one is Jameis Winston going against Taysom Hill to see who's going to be the starting quarterback. So I think everyone here is looking forward to seeing the outcome of that battle. I'm also curious too with Michael Thomas and the with what's going on there, how long he'll be out, who's going to step up to fill the void. I would say defensive wise, linebacker, you got some interesting things going on there. Who's going to be playing opposite of DeMario Davis? Defensive line, has some opportunities as well as cornerback. So, the Saints, we have some holes to fill as fans.
Absolutely. Kuda, what about you?
For me, I gotta say exactly what he said, but also I'm curious if Troutman's going to be everything we hope he can be. I mean,
Mm.
we've seen the tight end role be really a big part of our offense over the years, so I don't see why he can't be, but I'm curious if that's going to fall into place with everything that's been changing. And then also another thing is with Kamara and Murray, I'm curious how much Murray's going to step up in the offense with everything going on as well.
Mm-hmm.
Not like a
Absolutely.
battle that I don't think Kamara is going to be the number one, but you know what I mean? Like I just
Exactly.
think they're going to put Murray in a little bit more.
And Murray might be the second best skill position player currently on the roster with Michael Thomas hurt, right? So, I mean, that's definitely huge part of it right there. Matt, what about you? What are you most paying attention to?
I think it's the defense for me. I think the defense is what's going to carry us to wins. I think it's the mainstay on our team now. And I think if our defense can really take form in preseason and really be that elite level defense we've known it as, then the Saints team can still win football games. So that's the thing I'm looking most forward to. Besides that, it would be the QB battle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and let's hit on that right here. Like, let's go ahead and get everybody's take on the QB situation, because that's the thing everybody wants to know, right? I mean, that's something that's been talked about for a little while. A lot of people, I think a lot of people were 100% convinced that like it was going to be Jameis Winston, and then lately it seems like the tide is starting to turn a little bit. Cooter, I know we talked about this a little bit beforehand, but go ahead. What's your take on the QB situation, and ultimately who's going to be the week one go-to starter?
I think it should be Jameis, but I think it will be Taysom. That's my personal opinion. But I don't know. I just wish it would be Jameis.
So what makes you think that? What makes you think then that it's not going to be the one?
So I think Taysom should be our guy that you put on the field that the other team doesn't know what to expect. But I just, for whatever reason, he's clearly the guy that Sean seems to trust more. It could just be that they trusted Taysom last season because he knew the playbook better, and like at the end of the season, I don't know if that's what it was, but I'm very curious to see how it goes.
Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with Cooter because of you look at last year, COVID-19 obviously altered every NFL team's offseason, and so like Taysom knew the playbook. He's been with the organization for years, and so it made sense for him to get the nod whenever Breeze was dealing with the injuries. But I'd like to see Jameis, Winston start, for the Saints, and that's who I believe, we'll get the nod, as we get closer to week one. You just look at a statistical body of work. I'm like, number one overall draft pick, had a lot of success. If you look back even from 2015, to 2019, I'm like, he was phenomenal. I think he averaged around like 275 passing yards per game, 20, fantasy points per game. But then when you look at 2020, I know obviously he had a ton of interceptions, but I think part of that was with the scheme that he was a part of, with Bruce Arians. You think back with Carson Palmer, whenever he was tied, tethered to Arians, and he threw a lot of interceptions as well. So I think it's a great storyline for Jameis to get redemption, and I think he'll find it in New Orleans.
Yeah, really interesting. Like, I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm going to keep mine out of this. You guys are the expert here today. Matt, what do you think?
I'm on the flip side of that. I think Taysom Hill has to be our starter. I think with the void weapons on offense and the defense that I believe will become that elite level defense again, you're going to have to ball control. You're going to have to put the trust in the defense to win you football games. I don't want a turnover heavy quarterback that I believe is still going to cause you 2 to 3 turnovers a game. I don't think that's going to be the recipe for success. For fantasy output, I would probably lean Jameis just because he could open up the field probably a bit more. But on the football side, I want Taysom Hill with the ball in his hands.
I'll add a little bit something to that too, because it's a good conversation. All right, you look at Sean Payton. I know he's been in New Orleans since 2006. He's the architect of, the Saints offense. I know Breeze, when he came in, I know he had some input into that scheme. But I think as time went on, people just think Breeze. But, it's Sean Payton's scheme. And, quarterbacks have obviously had a lot of success in it, even if you look at prior to his time, in New Orleans. And so you bring Winston to a scheme like that with a very, headstrong, commands respect, play caller, head coach, and Sean Payton. And I think he's had a chance to sit on the sidelines, literally, just to really learn how to be a better NFL quarterback. And everyone loves a redemption story or a comeback story. And so I think once you pair Winston with Payton, we'll see really the best version of Jameis Winston, that we've seen up to this point, in his career. Then when you look at like the Saints schedule, they're going to have to lean heavily like on the offense. Like in addition to their divisional matchups, the Saints are also facing the AFC East and also the NFC East. So they're going to have to put up some points. I think Winston gives them the best chance to do that.
And hey, he threw the ball 11 times last season and he had no interceptions, guys. It's only
true.
11, but he had none.
I just don't know if the best version of Jameis is gonna win us football games. Like I'm not sold that that's what I want. I think Taysom Hill, what he is now, can win us football games.
Do you think it's going to be like full Taysom, or do you think they're going to do like a 60-40?
I think it could be at any time that the keys can switch hands. I think
Yeah.
you lose two, like if Taysom were to open the season and lose 2 in a row, I think it goes to Winston week 3, and vice versa. So I think it's going to be a revolving door if one quarterback's not succeeding. But the Saints are in the business with the money they're paying to everybody around in that organization. They're in the business to win, right? So they're good. I think Sean Payton, and I think that offense is going to need the best quarterback to let us win.
Sean Payton's been very consistent. Like, in fact, every interview that I've listened to from the GM down, like Mickey Loomis, like they've been very consistent in saying like we're not rebuilding. And I feel like we've listened to them enough that like I feel like I could tell if they were lying. I feel like I could tell if they were like, we don't really think we have a good team. Like it seemed like the moves that they made, like you can't lie in the moves that you make, right? Like that's you can say whatever you want into a microphone or onto a camera, but your moves that you make, like that's gonna say like there are things they could have done if they were really rebuilding, like getting rid of Lattimore, like trading Michael Thomas earlier. Like there are things that they could have done that would have signaled like, yes, they're definitely not competing, but they made a lot of moves that seem like they are. So if that's the case, and let's say Sean Payton really wants to win, Eric, I'm like, you're a Winston guy. Like, can Sean Payton deal with the turnovers, or do you think it's just ultimately he's not like he's going to be able to rein him in enough that Jameis will still be Jameis, but like a less turnover prone version?
Yeah, I do believe it will be a less turnover prone Jameis. So look at it this way. For these NFL players, this is their job, this is their career. They evaluate how they've performed year in and year out, and they essentially have like a coaching action plan. Hey, here's what I need to work on. Here's what I need to improve, and whoever their head coach is going to put him in the best position to do that. And he's in a great situation, like with Sean Payton. So he's well aware. He's well aware, I'm sure, what people say on social media. Just the film. He knows he turns the ball over, and so I think that's something that he'll definitely improve upon. And again, I think we'll see the best version of Winston. He's a number 1 overall pick. He's got the draft pedigree. Just the one thing with Taysom Hill is like he's been in the league for a while. He hasn't had an opportunity up to this point, but I think we're kind of teetering in the area for where we're hoping for him to be something that he's not, and hope's not a viable strategy, especially in fantasy football. I think Winston gives him the best chance to win.
I want to get back to something you said earlier, Calvin. So you were saying the thing about how like everyone's been thinking it's Drew, and we don't have him anymore. And that narrative as a fan, like I feel like the last 2 or 3 seasons, it's been this narrative of like, we better make it to the Super Bowl this year because we're not going to have this team anymore. And then things happen. I don't even want to talk about the no call. And then like we make it again and they're like, we better make it this year because we're not going to have the team. But it's like we keep telling ourselves that, but we keep making it further and further. And I think it's that long standing like history of the Aints and all that stuff that's like we feel like we almost don't deserve, or we're not used to having this organization that can take us. And so we have, I think, and I'm just speaking for myself, but like you kind of feel like it has to be this group because we can't make it without them just because that was the only way we made it. You know what I mean?
What a great point. I seriously, like that's an excellent point as a longtime Saints fan, that you're right. Like it does feel like, oh no, we lost Drew. Like, what does that mean? But Sean Payton's still here. And I think there are a lot of reasons to be optimistic. There's a lot of questions though that remain about the offense. And, let's get into, obviously the other storyline is the Michael Thomas injury, right? So like, let's get into like what happens as far as the pass catchers after that. Matt, does Alvin Kamara just get like 25 targets a game, or how does this work out?
I think Alvin Kamara is just going to be an animal again this year. I think it's going to be relatively similar to the style that he ran last year as it will be this year with Michael Thomas out. He's a smash in redraft at RB3 or 4 again. So I love everything about Alvin Kamara, but I think the biggest uptick for me is actually Deontay Harris. I
Hmm.
think now Sean
Oh,
Payton.
yeah.
I think Sean Payton's now going to have to get even more creative on offense. And Deontay Harris in that playoff game against the Bears was manufactured touches to make plays happen, and he did. So I think Sean Payton's going to take that into consideration, and he's going to manufacture him touches. He's going to manufacture Kamara touches, and he's going to do whatever he can to get his playmakers the ball, which I think Harris is a playmaker.
Eric, like Traquan Smith is a name that, like, has been around for a little while. Our expectations have always been pretty high for him. He's had some good games. I mean, I think in his rookie year, he had like 175, yard outing, but it's been very hit or miss. His game, like if you're right, Winston is the guy. Like, could that signal pretty good things for a guy with Smith's speed?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that would be the case. And I'm like, Smith, whenever he's been, I guess, called upon, he's exceeded expectations. I know Saints quarterbacks last year, if you count the playoffs, I know they had a rating of 145.3 whenever targeting, Smith. And then, Emmanuel Sanders was out with COVID. And just every opportunity that he had, he delivered. Now he needs to put it together, obviously, for an entire season. But I think the important thing is just to think about how this Saints offense is built, is where they lean really heavily like on the running backs. I think the running backs since Peyton has been in the Big Easy has averaged like 34 opportunities per game. So rushing attempts and targets combined. So Kamara is obviously the engine that propels this offense. So it doesn't have to necessarily be all like on the quarterback. And if you think back to the Saints whenever they won the Super Bowl with Drew Brees, that year against the Colts, glorious year, by the way, glorious, just going down memory lane there. But, they lean heavily on the running game and the running backs to make that happen. Brees obviously did his part, but it wasn't like it was all on Drew Brees and his arm to get the win. And so I think we'll get back to that, like even more, for where, Kamara, Latavius Murray, they'll both get fed. We may even see them on the field at the same time. Going back to your previous question, I think a guy like Kamara can easily exceed like 100 targets. I think now with Thomas being out for 5-6 games, maybe more, I could see Kamara even getting like 120 targets. It's that serious where we're at right now.
Cooter, I want to go to this next question and talk fantasy for a little bit here, and just start off. If somebody from this team is going to be a sleeper this season and just break out, who do you think that's going to be?
Man, so I have, since last year, I was really high on Traquan Smith. And I think, just like Eric said, that if it's Taysom and we can get the ball far down the field, he's going to be the guy. But it's going to be reliant on who the quarterback is. And so a lot of people are saying Callaway. So I don't know. As far as sleepers go, I feel like people are higher on Callaway right now. So I guess Traquan Smith would be a sleeper. I don't know if you can even consider it that at this point, though. I mean, he's going to probably be, you know what I mean? Like, he's not that low on the roster at this point. So I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, jump in.
No, it's just like, because just to Cooter's point, it's like, you look at Traquan Smith and you're just like, okay, Traquan Smith, when Thomas was there, but I think everyone's going to be on him. But I'm pretty high on Callaway. I'm like, I'm given an opportunity. I'm like, he's delivered. I think quarterbacks have had like a passer rating of, I think it's 99.5. If my memory serves me right. Whenever he was targeted. And he's done well when given an opportunity. So I think you'll have another opportunity now with Thomas being out, to step up. One guy that I'll mention. Now, this is definitely scraping at the bottom of the barrel in a way, but with this opportunity, he could see some run. I'll be watching him closely in training camp. Is Kawan Baker. University of South Alabama. I grew up probably about 15 minutes away from that campus. So whenever I was going into high school and everything, they didn't have a football team at that point. I'd already finished up college whenever they started that program. But, with that guy, I think he had around like 126 receptions, nearly like 1,900 receiving yards, 16 touchdowns. I know the Saints were pretty high on him. I believe they drafted him in the 7th round. Local kid. You got New Orleans here. Mobile, where South Alabama's at, where I grew up, it's only about a 2-hour drive away. So I'm sure they're very familiar with that program in Baker. And that's a guy, that, who knows? We could be talking about him in deeper formats as being a difference maker.
The Saints have had some success with seventh round picks in the past. Marcus Colston, obviously, most famously there.
Yes.
And I just looked at the ADP. Traquan Smith right now, the most recent. Now, this is before the Michael Thomas news, but Traquan Smith was wide receiver 73 on DLF's ADP, and Marquez Callaway down there at wide receiver 96. So practically free for these guys. And even without the Michael Thomas injury, you got to think some of these guys were going to get work anyway, right? Like, it's not like it was just going to be all Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. So what do you think, Matt? I don't think we got you for the sleeper for this year. What do you think? Is it one of those guys or is it somebody else?
It's Deontay Harris for my sleeper.
Okay. I did hit you. Yeah.
I love Deontay Harris. I loved him before that breakout Bears game. I loved him since the moment he really took over as our special teams all-pro, right? So I'm all in on Deontay Harris. We saw he was manufactured touches, and now without Michael Thomas, I think the lane is even wider. I thought he was going to break out this year as it was. He was kind of my lay low. I could take a shot on him, and the upside's there because he can break away at any point. So I'm all for Deontay Harris. I think he's going to be manufactured sweeps and touches like Deebo Samuel-esque kind of. So I'm all in on Deontay Harris. I think I trust that a little more, and I trust Sean Payton to get him in the plays, and because Peyton loves to be creative. So that's where I stand. I'm not high on Traquan Smith. I don't think there's enough there for me to buy into Traquan Smith, especially now because I think he is going to see a massive ADP bump. I'm all right. I'll pass on Traquan and just take my shots on Harris, and even Callaway I'll take a shot on.
Moody, you mentioned Baker already, so I'll flip this next question over to you here. If someone of this team is going to end up being a bust this season, who's that going to be?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. It's just given how the depth chart is, especially at wide receiver, they just need all the bodies, that they can get. And I don't really see anyone, and I'll kind of pivot back because the dynamics change so much. I would say who could be a bust could be Traquan Smith, because the expectations are getting higher, and that drum beat's only going to get louder, as training camps get going into preseason. So I'll say it could be Traquan Smith, and we could be looking at a scenario where Callaway, is the breakout candidate that we've been salivating for, and he kind of fills that void that we thought Traquan Smith would. So I would say Traquan Smith could be the bust.
There's definitely a lot of hype around Callaway. Like at some point during the season last year, it seemed like there was a lot of buzz about him, and just how excited the Saints were for him. So interesting that he gets a chance to go in basically as a starter. Cooter, what do you think? If there's somebody that's going to bust this year, is it Alvin Kamara? Could I make a case that it's Kamara?
I mean, I don't know. I think it all comes down to when you draft and where they're going in that moment, because a week ago, 2 weeks ago, it probably would have been Kamara. But now, I don't know. Well, no. Hold on, I'm confusing myself. Right now, yes, he probably could be a bust because people might be buying him really early because they think we're going to have to rely on him. You know what I mean? Like if he's moving up the draft board. But he was falling for a while. I mean, I remember 2 or 3 weeks ago, he was going some leagues like in the 5th. And I'm like, do y'all not remember who this guy is? Like, so I don't know. It just depends on when, but I would say I could see the Traquan Smith thing because he's going earlier. I wonder if because of the hive mind and how it all goes and everyone, if as it gets closer to September 9th, if it's so much hype around Troutman, that could be a bust depending on how high he starts to go. I don't know. It just depends on when you're drafting.
It does seem like we're putting a lot of faith in someone with 115 total receiving yards in his career, right? I mean, it does seem like we're just assuming he's going to be a lot better. Matt, what do you think? If somebody's going to bust,
if someone's going to bust, it's going to be the quarterback position in fantasy, just because how volatile it is, how often I think they might switch starters, how often they could switch starters. The range of outcomes is just too drastic, and the ceiling isn't even like high enough for me to really buy into for the risk. So I think both of their ADPs are bust territory. I don't like it.
So are you drafting them anywhere, Matt, or not really? No.
I mean, I probably won't get my hands on them just because their ADPs are not where I would have them. Mm-hmm. So I'm probably never going to be in that situation where I do draft them.
Yeah, the only thing I could see is maybe like a best ball league, just because you're like, hey, they could have a big week, Yeah,
I would need like a Mahomes or a Josh Allen or a Kyler to probably be okay with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're but they've been really relatively cheap. Like Winston has been going as the QB 27. Taysom Hill has been the QB 31. They like this, like very into your draft. I know in Scott Fishbowl, I got Taysom in the 11th round, and I was probably one of the earlier on him. And I guess if I was gonna like interject myself a little bit here and say a bust, like I do think if obviously I think Taysom is going to be. I've been saying it for a year and a half. I think he's going to be the opening day starter. On day one, but if Jameis Winston, if we live in a world where Jameis Winston is announced as the starter, I think he could start, being pushed up a lot. People connect the dots with Sean Payton, but then it's not like Taysom Hill's role is going to decrease, right? Like I feel like that's going to take away more than people are like. People just think like if he's the starter, then he's going to be the guy. But like if he's the starter, Taysom Hill is going to come in and steal touchdowns, still, like close to the end zone. I kind of feel like his fantasy ceiling is not as high as Hill's, because of that factor. Like if Hill gets the job, it's not like Winston's coming back in.
Yeah, I just don't think like either of them have like a drastic ceiling. Like I don't think that Taysom's range of outcomes reaches a mid QB2, and I don't think Jameis Winston's range of outcomes hits that QB1. Some people think it will. So the ceilings are much lower for me, and the floor is for Taysom. The floor is a lot more secure because they're paying him. They're paying him a big chunk of change. He's going to play, whether it's quarterback, tight end, running back, kick returner. Whatever they're going to play him, he's going to play, right? So he's got a fantasy floor. Jameis's fantasy floor is he doesn't start a game, right? So I'm not in on it. I'll pass on both of them.
I feel like Matt is like what we should all be doing. He's being cautious. He's not getting his hopes up. He's being
I trust the defense, Cooter. I trust the defense.
And here I am. I'm like, man, I don't know. Maybe we'll make it to the Super Bowl still. You never know.
Hey, the defense wins championships. Defense wins championships.
It could happen.
100% right. Matt bringing the level-headedness to this for sure.
That's probably rare.
This is a difficult question, I think, for this team. But if I put you on the spot, Cooter, I'll go back to you. Who's going to lead this team in targets?
Oh, I mean, I think it's Kamara, personally. Just those little tiny little targets. I think he might lead it.
Yeah, I mean, 85 receptions last year. It feels like if he stays healthy, he's going to smash the over on that, right? I mean, like he's been 81, 81, 81, and then 85. Like, could he hit 100, Eric?
Yes. No, absolutely. I still need to update my projections just to take into account the Michael Thomas news. But I had, Thomas and Kamara leading like the team like in targets. And I had Kamara for like around like 105 targets. And so, like I said, he could even see more. But I'm going to be fascinated being able to watch like Kamara and Latavius Murray on the field at the same time. That's the kind of creativity I want to see Sean Payton implement, because they just complement each other so well. Just reminds me of like Pierre Thomas and like Deuce McAllister, the Saints, back in the day.
Yes.
So I think we'll see that, because they've got one of the top offensive lines in the league, and have been, that's been the case, since Peyton has been in New Orleans. So let's just play on our strengths. Hey, our wide receiver core is not where it needs to be. You're going to have to throw the ball eventually, but just lean heavily on this offensive line and these running backs. I'm sure the offensive line will be up for the challenge. As an ex-lineman, if my coach is telling me, hey, we really need you guys right now, need you to open up some holes, I'm salivating thinking like, hey, this is smash mouth football. This is what I want.
Yeah, I don't know much about that part of the game, like the O-line, but my husband and I were talking today because I told him I'd be on this podcast, and he was pretty much saying that is one of our strongest points is our offensive line, and we need to run both running backs. But he did qualify it with, we are like one injury away from that not being true. He said like it's all on that, those starters.
Yeah, really interesting. You mentioned Pierre Thomas, the best screen running back I've ever seen. He gets no credit for that. He was so good at those screen passes, so crucial in 2009. Matt, what do you think? If you're going to say who's going to lead the team in targets, are we going to go a clean sweep with Alvin Kamara, or you got somebody else?
Yeah, it's Alvin Kamara.
Okay.
I honestly, like if I were to had to put my money on it, I don't think it's relatively close in targets.
Yeah.
Like I could see it all split up like 80 for Smith, 65 for Callaway, 65 for Harris, and then 130 targets for Kamara. Like he might get close to doubling the next second Saints receiver. I mean, Troutman, I think he might get an uptick in volume, but what is that, 90 targets max, 85?
Oh, maybe. Yeah, I would think like 50 or 60.
Yeah, 80. With Thomas out, it probably upticks his ceiling towards like 85, 90. But even then, it's not Kamara range. So it's easy for Kamara. But if I was on with just Tyler on his show just about a little while ago, and they were telling like one offensive line injury, like Cooter said, and this team is in trouble. And that's what it does scare me because the defensive line and the offensive line are going to have to win us football games.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, let me start with you on this next one then. Can he be the answer to both questions? Can Alvin Kamara also be the answer to both rush attempts?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like my internet is lagging, but hopefully you can hear me, so that's a good sign. Just the video, I'm like frozen with my mouth open. Not the best look, but I don't think that's happening live. But yeah. Kamara can lead in targets and in rushing attempts. I'm like I'm a big Latavius Murray fan. I just want to see them use him like even more because I'm like last year. I'm like. Yeah, he played well given the opportunities that he had. I think he faced like 8 or more defenders in the box on I think 45% of his rushing attempts. And he averaged nearly I think it was like 0.79 fantasy points per opportunity. So I think they just need to get him involved more, and that's going to help Kamara for where he may not have to handle, which is not what we want to do as Saints fans. We don't want to give Kamara like 25 to 30 opportunities a game.
Right.
That he's not going to last that entire season. Sean Payton is like, he's not like a workhorse. He's not a bell cow. So I just think we need to double down on this running game, offensive line, and feed Kamara, but then let's increase Latavius Murray's rushing attempts as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
Alvin Kamara's value has always been in efficiency. He's been very fantasy relevant on 15 to 18 touches a game. Starts getting like you said 25 more 30. Like that's not going to be good for him. Does anybody think that like it's not going to be Kamara that leads the team in rush attempts?
I think it's Kamara. I think it's close. I think actually Murray's going to see a slight uptick in carries, like Eric said. But I think it's Kamara probably like 63, 47, or 37. It's probably going to be something like that. But I think it's Kamara.
Eric, every now and then I think to myself, like, what would the audience want to ask in this kind of situation? And I think, like, we just said Alvin Kamara for rush attempts. We said him for the targets. But what if Taysom Hill's the quarterback? Do you still think Alvin Kamara is going to lead the team in targets? Because there's a lot of narrative right now that says that, when Taysom Hill's the quarterback, he doesn't like to throw the ball to Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, and that's one of those things for where you look. It's such a small sample size, but we have an off season that's passed since then. Again, it's Peyton's scheme. If he's like, Taysom, come here, Taysom. I need you to throw the football to Kamara. This is my offense. This is how it's run. Get it together, or you're going on the bench. It's just like anything. Hey, this is their job. Peyton is the supervisor. What he wants to have happen is going to happen. So Taysom Hill's not going to go rogue. So to answer your question, I'm not really concerned about that. It's like he's going to get fed. He's going to get his targets. This offense will be run the way that Peyton wants it.
Agreed.
Matt, you agree?
100% agree. You couldn't have said it better.
Cooter?
Oh, yeah. I have nothing to add to that. That's great.
Yeah.
He did target him 10 times in Philly. I don't think people remember that, like, the same time that Taysom took over as quarterback was the same time that Alvin Kamara got hurt. He wasn't in any of the practices leading up to a quarterback change.
Yep.
And then they're in Atlanta, and then of course they weren't on the same page. Like he didn't get a bunch of touches because he was hurt. It had nothing to do with Taysom. Then finally they got on the same page. The Denver game was weird. You just kind of throw that one out altogether. But Alvin Kamara did have a really good game. I mean, Latavius Murray did have a really good game there in Denver. Showed what you said, Eric, that there's a lot he can do.
Yeah.
So, all right. Last question. Eric, we'll go back to you to start this off. What's the team record?
Yeah, I'm. It pains me to say this as a Saints fan. I'm just not really as optimistic in the wins losses column. 6-11, 6 wins, 11 losses for me.
6-11. Oh wow!
I'm literally the flip. I'm going 11-6, just because
Nice.
I can't give them a negative in my heart. You have to manifest it.
Matt, you look torn. You look like you're gonna be in the middle.
I'm 10-7.
Okay. There we go.
10-7.
He really does trust our defense.
I trust the defense, and I just trust Sean Payton. I've come to learn that Sean Payton is the one coach in this league that can win you a game. And he's the one coach that can absolutely lose you a game. So I'm gonna put my optimism and my bias into the hope he wins and the defense stands up and stands tall. And I like Peyton Turner. I like the defensive line. I like the linebackers. I like Davis. So we're gonna see. It's gonna be a fun season. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I will just, interject, for no reason, one thing, like the all-time leading completion percentage for anybody who's thrown more than 120 pass attempts in the NFL. Does anybody know who that is?
Is it Taysom Hill?
It's Taysom Hill. All right. That was fun. I really appreciate you guys. Anybody, Eric, anything you got coming up that we can support you on that you would like for us to, anything you're writing or working on that we can check out?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is, just check out any of my content over at PFN, Pro Football Network. We're the primary voice, for pro football. We create a lot of content outside of just fantasy, latest NFL news, rumors, analysis on fantasy football, of course, betting, NFL draft, college football, and more. I would say the biggest thing over the next, couple of weeks, like 2 to 4 weeks, would be just the launch of our draft kit. I spent a lot of my time creating like player profiles and other articles for that draft kit. But I do have some other content too that I've published recently on like IDP bust, breakout candidates and different strategy type articles. And I have one that'll be published, I believe, tomorrow on like undervalued players. So I've got like 10 players that I believe are undervalued who can easily outperform their ADP. So I think that's the best way to support me. Hit me up on Twitter. Always happy to help. But hey, thank you for the invite. This has been a blast.
Thank you so much for coming on. Matt, what do you have? Obviously you just did a podcast. Is that going to be released tomorrow?
I believe it'll be Wednesday. It'll be Wednesday with Tyler. I joined as a special guest on the Dynasty Duo. But besides that, catch all my work on the league winners. I'm doing some mini series now. But once the season kicks off, I'll be doing 2 articles a week called the Dynasty Diaries, just with my thoughts on the dynasty values week to week of every player that took a big shift. It'll be my thoughts, kind of like a diary. So I thought that's a pretty cool idea. I'll be rolling that out. But other than that, my podcast every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, and then I just on Twitter creating memes about David Montgomery's value.
Cooter, is there anything else like under your sleeve that you're just gonna like change the fantasy industry on and the way we produce content in the next couple months?
No, but what I did want to bring up, so we talked off air about Bobby Hebert for a second before we got live. I just want to say, when you say Bobby Hebert, y'all think of a different person. For me, the only thing that means for me is we're drunk on the way home from a loss and no one's talking in the car and it's just Bobby Hebert and we just sit there in pain, and that's the voice that I hear that haunts me in my sleep. Like, that's what I think of when I think of Bobby Hebert.
Bobby Hebert and Mike Detillier.
Yes, that's a true fan right there. Cooter gets it, and I'm like, she gets it. That's enough said.
One time we were in Champion Square and I heard his voice and I'm like, I don't know what he looks like, but that's Bobby Hebert. I know that's Bobby Hebert.
That is hilarious. He broke my heart when he went to Atlanta. Why'd you do it to him, Bobby? Why'd you do it? All right. Well, for all these guys, make sure like you see their name right there on the screen. Make sure you're following them everywhere. And yeah, like you're gonna get smarter. You're gonna laugh. Like you're gonna enjoy your time if you are following them for sure. I am at Calvin and Hobby. Make sure you're following me, and at DL Football. That's the home of dynastyleaguefootball.com. And that's where you want to go for all of your Dynasty fantasy football needs. Make sure you're subscribed to this YouTube channel. Hit the like button. Turn those notifications on. Leave some comments. That helps our algorithm. It just shows that you like the channel. We always appreciate that. So for these guys, for DLF, I am at Calvin and Hobby. I'm Cal, and we will see you on the next show.